Okay, so the fifth segment is called "How Can We Waste Less Energy in the Gulf?" And I think this is a lot has to do with how do you incentivize people in the UAE? I mean, the UAE is considered one of the has the highest carbon footprint.
Per capita,
Qatar
yeah,
UAE,
per capita UAE in
per
Qatar.
capita, UAE in Qatar.
Oh, how do you?
Is it a? I mean, how do you do it? You know, prices are subsidized. There isn't really a culture of conservation here in the region. How do you change it? It's a very social, you know, kind of. It's difficult.
Well, look at the industries that are growing in this part of the world. We've got two of the fastest growing airlines, well, maybe three, maybe four, in the world. You know, it's the aviation industry. The other day I was actually driving back from Abu Dhabi, having come from the Grand Prix, and on my way to the airport, where there was a huge air show, where everything was backed up, to fly out to Qatar. So, you know, we have very energy intensive industries. And the funny thing is that, you know, we were talking about inward investments, when we talk about relations with Asia. The Chinese, desperate for energy, they don't actually want to have a normal trading relationship. What they want to do is they want to come here and develop energy-intensive industries in the region, in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, the Koreans want to come here, and then export it back to their countries. So it's not really a true investment because it's cheaper, you know, you get cheaper feedstock. So I think so long as you have cheap feedstock, the Saudis give industry feedstock, gas feedstock, at 75 cents per British thermal unit, per million British thermal unit, which is rubbish, you know, 75 cents, there you can just put it. Desalination, you know, we talk about this expansion in our population, a huge expat community. Where are they going to drink water from? You know, it's got to be desalination, that runs on gas. So we have already very, very energy intensive industries.
But the argument is that we don't have a conservation culture because, you know, electricity and water are very cheap. They're subsidized severely. For some, a little bit less, but in general, it's still considered cheaper than a lot of other places in the world. What this does is that it makes you very apathetic to the need to conserve. Now, conversely, on the other hand, I was sitting with, some of you might know Dr. Ibtisam al-Kitbi, a political scientist from the UAE, and we were talking last night. And she was telling me that she was reading this in a paper, or she was talking to a political science another professor, who was telling her that the equivalent of bread and the Gulf in the context of the other Arab countries, which was the spur of the revolutions and the subsidies and all, is electricity and water, where a lot of nationals across the Gulf would really, I'm not saying they would go to the streets, but I'm saying their life would become severely more complicated financially if those subsidies were removed. So how do we do it?
I think there are just much cleverer ways to go about this, right? I mean, it's just posed as a black or white argument behind very, very cheap.
Show me the grey.
Yeah, I will. Very, very cheap energy on the one hand, and everybody likes getting cheap energy, but it's wasteful, right? Other hand, prices soar, prices go to what a real cost would be, everybody complains, industry runs away, and so on. The middle ground is just to be much smarter and say, look, you want people to pay the full cost of their energy use. If certain groups of people are going to struggle, you know, maybe the poorer in society or certain groups who are going to have a hard time with that, compensate them directly.
You're talking about smart subsidies.
Smart subsidies. Give them a check. You know, just say, fine, I know your electricity bill has gone up, here's a check that will cover that. So you've still got an incentive to be smart and turn your air conditioning down and close the windows and all this kind of stuff, buy your light, buy your energy efficient light bulbs. But equally, financially, you're kind of kept whole, you're still comfortable. You know, we've got super cheap petrol in this country, and most of that is going to the guy with 6 Hummers in the garage, right? It's not going to the poor person who as you say, is struggling to make ends meet. So these subsidies, they're just not well directed. I think that's the case. So it comes.
You envision a situation where you walk to a gas station and there's different pods depending on the car that you're driving. So if you're a Mercedes, you go into that one and you pay a lot higher price than the guy in the Toyota.
Well, in Europe it kind of works like that. I mean, at least your vehicle registration fee depends on the size of the engine of the car. I'm not actually a big fan of that, but I would say make fuel expensive, but give a rebate to people. So, if you're the guy with 6 Hummers, you don't get 6 rebates, you get 1 rebate. Okay, fair enough. That makes you think again about your consumption. If you're the person with the Toyota Camry struggling to make ends meet, then, fuck it, then the rebate check probably means something to you.
I think if you had to construct a dystopia of energy efficiency, it would look something like the UAE and the other Gulf countries, because for the reasons we've discussed, you've got the perfect storm of a harsh physical environment, energy-intensive industries being developed, cheap energy, subsidized energy, and no great sort of movement towards greater energy efficiency. So the question is, how do you move away from that? And I agree with Robin that you have to hit people in the pocket. And Robin makes a very important point that part of the reason subsidies cling on in countries for much longer than they should do is that they favour the rich people and the elites who make the policies, because they're the biggest consumers of energy, and that is a crucial point, and why, you know, in Nigeria, you know, there was a long tradition of political dishonesty with sort of these guys getting, these politicians getting up and saying, oh yes, but you cannot take subsidies away from the poor market seller in Lagos, he depends on the petrol subsidy, and it's like, well, if he gets this much out of it, you get this much, so, you know, ultimately that was completely dishonest. And I think the key thing, though, is that if you take away subsidies, either you have to do something like Robin says, to have some kind of direct, it could be a direct distribution, like he says, or, you know, one day you can do it by the interaction of other parts of the tax system. You know, if an income tax system was ever introduced, that would be another way to make taxation more progressive. But the other thing that you must do is raise prices, but also give people an alternative. But Michal, is government serious about this?
I mean, I believe in economic incentives. I believe if it gets expensive, then I think they'll get very serious about it very quickly.
I think Dubai is getting there. I mean, there's certainly a lot more policy work, a lot more attention to it. Not too much concrete yet in terms of what you would see just as a person around the city, but definitely the policy is coming. And I think because Dubai has moved, Dubai isn't in the position of Kuwait anymore. Now it's more like Singapore. It's an energy importer that depends on its neighbours for energy, and that makes it insecure, it makes energy more expensive. So the whole mindset, I think, has to change. And at a government level, amongst the people who are responsible, that mindset is changing, that's what I see. But it's then a long road before you see that really concrete things in terms of being an inhabitant around the city.
Questions on conservation?
With Lobby and debate, they spend so much money on marketing, and it's very artificial from where I see it.
Marketing what?
Everything, marketing with their businesses, marketing the city itself.
Right.
To position like Abu Dhabi and Dubai as like business centers.
Hubs.
However, China doesn't do that. China is known for their for what they do, for the achievements that they've done. So from where I see it, I'd rather Abu Dhabi, invest in solar energy instead of artificial marketing expenses, because they spend millions and billions on, marketing instead of something useful to the country and to the citizens. Why doesn't that happen?
I think you're right, but I think the reason why we market ourselves and the Chinese don't is because we're expensive and they're cheap.